slaves, Africans, any law that anyone need respect. And here I see the living evidence. What you're presenting is the living evidence of a people who have no rights that any Canadian need respect.
Well, that's exactly right, Coley, and that's why the crime continues today. The new government, Liberal government in Canada, has announced an inquiry, yet another government-controlled inquiry, into missing Aboriginal women. Now, I have personal knowledge of this because I worked as a street minister in Vancouver on the West Coast for many years. I worked with a lot of the women who were trying to document in their neighborhood why so many were going missing. We documented almost 1,000 cases of Native women just vanishing, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police officially say, well, there was a few dozen. And one of the reasons they say that is they themselves are involved in these disappearances, that these are racially targeted women. We found that if you trace the history of these Native women going missing, they are from the traditional matriarchal clan mothers who traditionally held ownership of the land. So if you're a big corporation, you want to get the land and get the government-controlled Native chief to sign it off to you. You got to get rid of the traditional clan mothers who know the real story of whose land it is. And so these disappearances are actually, I believe, being targeted by big money, by big corporations, including Chinese cartels that are now operating all over northern Canada.
Chinese cartels?
Chinese, not just American multinationals, but the Chinese, trying to get the resources. Oil, uranium, water is what Canada is good for in their mind.
Wait a minute, oil, uranium, and water.
Yes, and Native
water
people,
being urgent.
Native people sit on a lot of those resources, and that's, I believe, what's behind a lot of these disappearances today. So it's ongoing genocide.
You know, I saw the story maybe 15 years ago where I think it's the Mohawk and a golf course. Somebody wanted to build a golf course.
Right.
So they go in and war on the natives and run them off of their land because they need to build a golf course. Such a non-essential.
That was in Oka, north of here in Montreal. And they brought in the Canadian Army, and there was a big standoff.
Yeah, well, the natives didn't back down.
No, they didn't.
As I recall.
No.
The incident. But I was recalling an incident in Scotland where we have a man that's running for office in the U.S. who wanted to build a golf course. He destroyed the world's most famous bogs in order to build a golf course. And the homes of the people near the bog, he needed a golf course. We need to, I don't know, Kevin, I wonder sometime about human beings. I really do, about human beings and our respect for each other beyond the words, beyond the religions, beyond the games we play with each other. Because this is a deadly, beastly game. I understand that the Cree is the Cree Indians who can't come off of their reservations because it's been nuclear contamination.
Well, in northern Saskatchewan, the corporation called Camco, which also does uranium mining in the Black Hills of South Dakota. They're the ones who are poisoning the Lakota people. Russell Means, our brother there with the American Indian Movement, he just died of colon cancer.
Yeah, oh, goodness.
There isn't a family in the Rosebud and Pine Ridge reservations there who don't have cancer in their family because of this massive contamination. Same thing's happening all over northern Canada. And you can't even go into those areas, and I've tried. The Army has it sealed off. You can't even go into those areas to look at the devastation being caused by the uranium mining. That's where the U.S. military gets their depleted uranium from. Cree land in Canada.
So that accounts for the stories that people have seen U.S. military coming in and out of Canada.
Oh, they operate all the time. U.S. Marines, the Homeland Security, FBI, DEA. You see their agents operating routinely. And so, you know, this is a much bigger crime than simply a few children disappeared. I mean, this is intergenerational genocide, and it's carrying on right now.
New York, are you listening? Are we really listening? Because you've got to, New York. We have got to begin to do these studies. We've got to read these books. Murder by Decree, The Crime of Genocide in Canada by Kevin Annett, an accomplished researcher, an accomplished organizer. It is just urgent that we begin to look at this because we can't just let it pass. Because if we let it pass, it's bound to increase here where it has not disappeared.
Now, you can get that, just so people know, you can get that on Amazon.com. And my second book, which I think we'll talk about in the other interview.
Yeah, we will talk about it. But I want to continue to talk about this murder by decree and genocide. You know, the UN Commission on Genocide, on Human Rights, has had a few things to say about genocide. Generally, when we think of genocide, we refer to Germany and World War II and the crime against Jewish people in Germany. It is seldom when we think of genocide that we think of the indigenous populations of the United States. And I was reflecting just for a second on George Washington's statement on the goal of the United States of America. At that time, the Republic, the new Republic. He was speaking in 1787. When to paraphrase, he said that the goal of the new nation, the new Republic, would be to destroy the wolf and the savage, moving from east to west, setting up a base in the west, and then moving southward. The goal. Here's someone talking about a new republic with a goal of destroying the helpless wolves of the land and the savages.
Putting them in the same category. Well,
Amen.
The Mohawk have a word for George Washington in their language, and I know this. I worked a lot among the Mohawk for a number of years, including helping to excavate at the site of one of the schools, where we've actually found bones of children and buttons off school uniforms. But that was shut down by the government very quickly in 2011. But anyway, when I was there among the Mohawks, they described how traditionally they had allied with the British during the Revolution. So after the British left, the Mohawks were driven out of New York up into Canada. Mm-hmm. And their name for George Washington is crop burner, because George Washington and General Clinton burned about 200 miles of corn in New York State and just destroyed their whole base of their society and turned them into refugees. So, I mean, yeah, it's that same genocide that's right there from the very beginning. And not just in America. All the stuff goes back to Rome. The Vatican is really the force behind a lot of this. The Jesuits set up the original Indian schools in America and Canada. And they had that whole idea that if you weren't a Catholic, you didn't have the right to live. And if you were an Indian or a black
South
person,
America, the Spanish.
If you got baptized, you could be enslaved. But if you didn't get baptized, you could just be wiped out like a wild animal. So that's still standard policy. Those papal bulls allowing that have never been taken off the books.
And apparently the practices haven't been taken off either, Kevin.
No, they haven't.
So that's really a part of the tragedy that we are faced with, is that we as a people in the U.S., in Canada, in Mexico, and Central America have not been able to, that is progressive-minded people who are bent on treating human beings as human beings with respect for the laws we create, the lies we create in often cases, because the laws become lies, because we have no respect for them. But until we decide that we are going to end this great tragedy, short of the total genocide, because we're talking about the total genocide now here of this people. And when I was thinking about these artificial earthquakes that we have that as a result of fracking, because we say we need more oil, so we destroy the ground level water, and also create artificial earthquakes. When I look at pipelines running across the country, stretching to Canada, to what end, Kevin?
Money. That's what's behind
you
all
can't
war.
Eat money.
Yeah, but
you can't drink money.
It struck me right away, talking to hundreds and hundreds of eyewitnesses as I've done over the years about this. Your mind can try to understand this stuff, but the heart can't. And when you try to fathom it, it doesn't make any sense. And you could say, well, it was all about grabbing lands and resources and everything. But there's got to be some deeper evil responsible for this, and I don't have an answer to it yet, because I've seen how the majority of people, when they have a job, are willing to do the most heinous things, the most murderous things, or turn a blind eye and turn the other way. And that's what the real enemy is. Like Martin Luther King said, it's not the evil people that are the problem, it's those who knew better and do nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Silence. Remaining silent.
Yep.
We have to break the silence. We're looking here at murder by decree, the crime of genocide in Canada. Between 1923 and 1996, Kevin Arnett, sitting here with me, has well documented the mass murder of more than 50,000 Canadian children. We're just talking about the children. We're not talking about the mass murder of their parent and others that is occurring in this same time period because parents fight back. They're forced into these native schools by the government. Most of these schools are run by the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church. And it's within these schools with these trusted religious figures that children lose their lives in multiple ways. And some of the ways are so frightening that it scares me out of my seat. Yet I'm driven to say that there has to be change, New York, that we cannot afford to stand by. I'm Coley Clark. I'm with the Judicial Violence Symposium. We're on our way into Princeton Theological Seminary this summer to hold the first major symposium on judicial violence in the United States, and we are coupling that with Canada and the crime of genocide, the judicial violence against Canadian people, especially against Canadian women and children. I invite you, New York, to tune in